Welcome each and everyone to this monthly conversation on Boys Future, Boys Challenge. This discourse is born out of the work we do with the boys here in Africa, and it actually began July last year when I was looking for a platform that holds regularly conversations around the boy child and men globally. So, and having worked with boys and men for over 5 years, I saw a need that can amplify the collective global voices in outlining issues and concerns of the boys' child and how we can collectively be a voice in terms of solution to some of these concerns. And over the years, the statistics are staggering when we look at all of these issues. So we've extended this to all the continents in the world within the passing year we started. We've been in Asia, in Oceania, in all over the world. This discourse is well known. And our work with boys is continuous because for me, I believe the greatest test of our civilization is whether or not we'll be able to cultivate men for the next generation. So, and in terms of this test, how well we're going to do well on it, depends on how we regularly come together to have discussions such as this. So today is boys and suicide. Why boys and suicide? It's just the divine power that kept me for me to be in your midst today. In 1997, I actually took a decision to end my life. A day before that day, I was very vibrant, happy, and I looked at the future with all the great energies that everything is going great for me. I had this elderly woman who I extended support for because my mom had about 16 rooms, single rooms apartment in my village. And when she left us with the buildings, I was young and she had left us for long. So I saw this elderly woman who treks like 14 kilometers to her farm every day. And I was wondering how I can be of help just to relieve her so she can find a place to stay instead of going back and forth every day. So I offered to give her a room apartment free of charge out of the rooms that we had in my mom's apartment. But this very morning, this woman now had 2 granddaughters. So on this morning, I just woke up. I had some friends with me who were undergraduate. All of a sudden, I had somebody knock at the door. And what went wrong was that I was accused to have stolen money from her granddaughter who used to hawk rice and beans in the morning in the village. It was embarrassing. And what happened was that they took me to a spiritualist who brought out a Bible. And in the Bible, they inserted a key in between. And one guy was holding the edge of the Bible this way, and the other one was holding it. And they spin the Bible. And upon trying to spin the Bible, wherever it stopped, whoever is turned to stop, will be the one accused to have stolen that. And indeed, when it was my turn, the thing stayed. And the entire village believed that I had stolen that money. I was never near to what happened. I could not bear the shame. I could not see anything worthwhile living again. So I trekked like 7 kilometers into the forest. My idea is that perhaps if I ran into a wild animal, it should consume me. Or I find a running river deep enough to swallow me and take me with the torrent, there I end it. But the divine power was such that when I actually approached this mighty river, and I got to the bank of the river, and I was making like a pronouncement and curses that I know today will end, but I was accused of what I never did. Sorry, it's the flashes of the past just came to my, I'm just sorry, please. So as I was just recounting my curses and pronouncing them, unknown to me, beside this running river was this kola nut plantation. And someone was all trying to pluck the kola nut. And quietly when he saw that I was at the verge of just to jump to drown myself, he walked quietly towards where I was. All I could see was that I heard somebody who kicked me by the side and grabbed me like this. And he said, "Why on earth do you want to kill yourself?" I said, "Please let me go. Please let me go." So they tied me like somebody, like a prisoner, and they brought me back to the door. This was not my plan following the previous day. This was just an occasion, a circumstance of rejection, of shame, of nobody to come to believe me. And in as such as that has happened to me, I'm grateful today that I have a lived experience. That's one way or the other, I was able to come out of this. There are different circumstances and situations that lead some of our boys to want to end their lives. So you see my story, just an instant shame, rejection, accusations, and all of that. I thank you for being part of this discourse, and I hope to learn from all of you to see how our boys and our men can get help from suicide. God bless you all. Thank you, Mr. Ishmael. Mr. Ishmael, are you there to connect from there? Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes, I hear you, Ola.
Mr. Ishmael, can you hear me? Okay, so with that being said, yeah, for the panelists, we have 12 minutes for each panel to make their presentations. We have other panelists who wants to chip in one or two things in the course of each one presentations. And going by the order of events, I want us to welcome Sally Andrews from the UK to start her presentation. She's going to do her introduction, permit me. I know she's the founder of Split the Difference in the UK. She's a voice to men and boys at the UN level. She's done so much. So briefly, she's going to talk about her works and what we have to learn from her today. And her topic is very, very, very dear to my heart. That is the impact of suicide on family and community. So, ma'am, you're welcome. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Ola. Thank you very much. It's nice to see you all. Some of you I recognise from the last time that I was here, and it's nice to see you. Some I don't. There's a couple of people that I don't recognise. Split the Difference is an organisation I started from 5 years research in a year in the UK and then 4 years in other places. Over 15 countries. I say over 15 because I looked at some Arab countries and some African countries. So the research was based on evidence that I found that men don't have equality in services. And the reason they don't is because legislation, while it's ambiguous around gender, it's when you get into guidance and policy, frontline service delivery and fiscal spending, all of those are guided towards women and girls. And my evidence showed lots of, how can I say, lots of areas. In fact, it became too much. So I had to narrow that down to 13 areas that we would focus on, which kind of, if you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the person's need to be able to thrive and at least to go through parts of their life where they change and evolve to be the best they can be. I kind of focused on things like that. So having a home, health, family, people that you love, those kinds of things. One of the things that became apparent to me quite quickly is that 191 countries across the world hold the highest suicide rate for men and boys. In the UK, the lowest limit, there is one country where it's equal currently, and there's a couple of countries that are slightly over for women and girls, but the lowest in men and boys is 2 out of 3, and the highest is 7 out of 8. Last time I looked at figures. So that was very poignant for me because I realized that because the UN and the different structures they've got in place and then how that goes into each country doesn't support equality and equity for men and boys, that the results of that for me was the high suicide rates, because there's nobody to capture or to understand the needs of men and boys. Now the services that I run, they're not frontline services. We Split the Difference aim is to change legislation. Now there's 2 key things that happened in recent times that has created a powerhouse, almost an atomic powerhouse of inequalities. In 2010, the UN Women was formed, and in 2011, the Istanbul Convention. Now, those 2 things, once the Istanbul Convention became known to all of the countries, everybody's asked to ratify the normal processes to adopt a convention. Once that started to take form, the processes within legislation guidance, not just in domestic abuse, because while this convention is to protect women and girls from violence, great thing to do, obviously, UN Women, great thing to do, same. But what we should have had is we should have had a UN Men, and we should have had a convention that either included them or gave them the same ability to have consultation and to be cared for, basically. So for those who don't know, forgive me, I don't want to assume that everybody knows how this works, but once a convention is formed and the consultation for the convention, once that process, the whole process is being completed, the convention is then asked to be ratified and adopted. It isn't only the domestic abuse that it impacts on. So the protection of women and girls comes in the form of a risk management system that has become incorporated in basically every piece of legislation across the world, because the requirement is to care for and protect women and girls. So things like, you'll find its footsteps in pretty much everywhere, even contract law. So things like human resources, education, further education, health, homelessness, housing, anywhere I looked, I found its footprint. So policies within organisations, right down to frontline services, were created to focus on the needs of women and girls and to make sure they were safe. In some policies, they will identify safeguarding, particularly in children's services and family court. It can be young teenage boys, it can be, you know, that there is mention of a lot of policies, but the risk management systems, they are negated for men and boys to the price of women and girls. So for me, these two acts, the UN Women and the Istanbul Convention, pretty much annihilated the ability for men and boys to be allowed to be vulnerable. I don't mean not be men, I mean they weren't allowed to have a voice in all contexts. So suicide for me and for what we do is kind of the core. It's suicide in children and families. That's the core of what we do. Now, if you want to challenge something that is born in the United Nations, the only way to do it is to do it in your own country. So first of all, it's like any complaints process. If you're not happy about something, you have to complain in your own country first. And if your own country doesn't resolve those issues appropriately, you then step into the UN. Now, there are ways you can directly access complaints in the UN, but for us, when we looked, because I explored the 6 committees, the processes of communication, how they formulate things, how you complain, which ways you can do it, because there's multiple ways that you can do it. The best way for me to do it was first start in the UK, form relationships with people in other countries, and then ask those people if they would come and work beside Split the Difference to participate in what we were doing, and we would support people to do that. So, for example, in the UK, we've got a few projects going at the moment. Ultimately, my ultimate aim is to get a UN men, because the way I figure it, if we can give men the same voices we give women, the pathway for consultation in each country has already been set by the UN women to a large degree. So I figured if there was a UN men, then men would be given their same voices as women, because the pathways are already there and they can then join in that consultation process once there's a formulated body where they should be asked about what's going to happen for them, what their needs are. So to do that, we have just started in Northern Ireland, the Violence Against Women and Girls policy, which has come from the domestic abuse bill in the UK. They are, in Northern Ireland, they didn't have that policy and they've just begun to create it. In England, Scotland and Wales, there's 4 areas in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland. Apart from Northern Ireland, all of the other areas had formulated their Violence Against Women and Girls policy. But Northern Ireland have only just begun that consultation process. So for me to ask the UN to provide a UN men, we've done some strategic planning and decided that the best way for us to do that is to start in the UK asking for a violence against boys and men strategy. It would enable men and boys to have a voice within the UK system when they're talking about domestic abuse, and then the policies that have got the risk management systems in through the guidance of law and frontline policies would then have to create a space for men to stand beside women while they were going through consultation and forming fiscal management. So the idea is that we do this across the UK. We've already started doing this in Northern Ireland, and we're quite surprised at how many doors are actually open to those discussions. So I've met with Human Rights Commissioners, the Equality Commissioner, the Executive in Northern Ireland that manages all the local authority, the local governance policies. And we have a conference in the government buildings in Stormont Castle on November the 18th. Which will highlight some of the issues of boys and men, and suicide is part of that. In about 2 weeks' time, we're going to mirror this in Wales, and then we're going to branch it across the whole of the UK. For me, because the modern day impact from the Istanbul Convention means that because those policies and services are designed now to focus first on women and girls, when a man goes in, so for example, we know in the UK, 87% of homelessness is men or boys. So failure in education is 30%. I can keep rallying these figures out to you, but basically for us to create a policy that opens the door, so a man who's homelessness, we know that 87% of the homelessness are men and boys, but we also know that a large proportion of them are young men and boys who've experienced violence within their own home. So we're focusing on areas where we can formulate a large argument based on stats and evidence push that forward. If we fail, we already have a plan and structure then to take that directly to the United Nations, requesting that a UN men be put in place. We're currently working with 11, we're currently in discussion with 11 other countries who are willing to stand beside us and to formulate a similar challenges within their own countries. And we are praying that within the next sort of 6 to 12 months that we're going to get some very strong answers. There are certain things in law here, like Section 75, which is human rights, goes against the human rights, that we're going to use to attack that. But that's one of the strategies. In the UK, in relation to suicide rates, one of the top reasons is where children are removed from their father's care, or where their fathers are unable to be part of their children's lives. We are currently taking action to take the government to court under the Child Maintenance Service, where 90% of the men that are pulled into this are 90% of the people are men. The Child Maintenance Service currently has is 1,150 people are dying every year purely because of this service, which is 3 deaths a year. They are acting illegally. They falsify arrears. They turn men into cash cows. They falsify arrears. They add falsified income on top that often leaves men with maybe £100, English pounds, £150 per week, per month to live off, which is impossible here. So we are taking the areas that have got the largest proportion of suicides, and we're actually working to cease and to attack those areas within the UK. Currently, we've got other things. We've been running things like suicide prevention adverts on local TV. These are designed to raise awareness and asking people to be aware that men experience and show signs of suicide ideology in a different way to women. And as an organisation, we're now in a position where we're reaching out to other countries, and we're asking them if they will join us with the support from us, because we've got a human rights lawyer that works with us, and she's currently mapping the human rights, the effect of the Istanbul Convention and CEDAW on other human rights policies, so that when we get the other countries together and we've supported them, we can approach, we are hoping, a minimum of 15 countries to be able to approach the UN and be able to lobby by country as opposed to just one organisation who we are currently. Suicide prevention, the impact of suicide prevention on a family is, if one person commits suicide in a family, it increases the heightened rates to turn that into a norm, and it normally doesn't stop at one suicide. It becomes an internal permission within the family as a choice. And for us, this is, I mean, for example, we've got families where fathers and sons have committed suicide in a very short span of time, but even generationally larger than that, grandfathers, fathers, sons and grandsons. This is one of the tales. We also know that there's an area, if you tap in to Google and tap in the words mass suicide in Bridgend, South Wales, we have had major issues. It's the largest suicide community in Wales. I think it's UK wide. So we've got, there was a period of time in this one particular area where over a span of a few years, there was multiple suicides. So it became a trend. There's been lots of psychologists and there's been studies done on this because it was massive. We know that in teams,
yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, can you just round up your section in like 2 minutes?
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So the only thing that I would say is that in communities, in teams and structured teams, rugby teams, we've got rugby teams local to us, for example, where in the last 18 months, they've had 7 suicides of under 16 in one rugby team. So while each person, when we work with people with suicide ideology, my first qualification is psychotherapy. You start to learn the impact on families because of that. I work with whole families. But when you look at the broader impact on communities, it's massive. It's absolutely massive. And for us, because now I know with my research, I know why men commit suicide. A lot of it's based on shame and an inability to process, being isolated within their issues and not having somebody to share that with, not having services they can reach out to when they need it. You know, there's loads of reasons, and too many. It's hard for me to talk to you right now because there's so much I could actually say to you, so much facts and things I could say to you. It's like I'm trying to minuscule them down, but you've got my contact details. They're in the chat if I can answer anything, or if you'd like to contact me further, please don't hesitate. Okay. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally. That was brilliant presentations, and you've highlighted a lot of this impact, looking at the norms it can create for families when suicide is when it takes place. And you talk about the mass suicide solution, psychotherapy, and how to get out of shames and isolation. That was good from your end. Please, let's get to the chat and leave a comment for Sally, or you have a question for her. And that will take us to the next panelist. That's Dr. Duruvan Thomas. Dr. Thomas, are you ready for us?
I am ready. May I have co-host, please?
I'm going to give you that right now. So you have 12 minutes.
Thanks again for the opportunity to be a part of what is happening.
You're welcome, sir. We are glad to have you with us. You are now a co-host, sir. So talk a little bit about yourself in 2 minutes and 10 minutes for your presentation. Thank you, sir.
All right. I am Donovan Thomas. I lead an organization called Choose Life International, and our flagship is suicide prevention. Started October 1, will be exactly 14 years since we have started in Jamaica. I've been working with youth for over 30 years. This is the logo of Choose Life International. We believe in helping people live physically, emotionally, and spiritually. We have the bio-psychosocial spiritual model of intervention that we have just used. We believe that there's a place for medicine, there's a place for counselors, there's a place for social outreach, and there's a place for spiritual connection to be able to help people heal. We have recently completed the World Suicide Prevention Day seminar on September 9th. We've been doing that now for the last 14 years, and we had over 1,500 people on Zoom and over 600 on YouTube, spanning probably 10 to 15 nations. That's our logo there on the screen. And I want to talk with you a little bit about risk factors for suicide. And then I'm going to talk about warning signs. And risk factors are those factors that expose people to. And so those are, the opposite of risk factors is protective factors. So those factors that expose people to or could help them to become suicidal. History of substance abuse. And as we think of the male community, we realize that many times there is the issue of substance abuse, as that impacts many of our young men and to a lesser extent women. Physical disability or illness, recent death of family or close friends, sometimes because men internalize so much, they act out rather than speak out, and recent death of family or friend could be a risk factor. Exposure to bullying behavior, sexual abuse, mental health condition, access to harmful means of death, and relationship problems. And let me just pause to talk a little bit about breaks up. It could end up with murder suicide. And we have seen some of that in our own country. Then previous suicide attempt is a risk factor. 80% of those who complete suicide are people who have attempted before. Now, this is just one sheet to just reflect, one page to reflect what I've just highlighted there. I want to go on now to talk about warning signs among boys. And I want to say to us that every suicide threat must be taken seriously. Making suicide threats must be taken seriously. And suicide threat can be overt or it can be subtle. A young man may outrightly decide, or he may say, I'm not going to be around anymore. Then frequent talking about death. Those are warning signs. Sometimes even doodling with disconnected body parts. Those are some of the things that we see as we work with people who are suicidal. Then negative, I am not valuable, I am not capable, I have all these negative things going on. Preparation for death is a major warning sign. And one young man, 14-year-old, couple days, 2 weeks before he took his life, he actually took his Xbox from his parents' house to his friend's house. He wanted to make sure that it was used, and feeling like a burden, where young men feel as if they are burdened to others, the hopelessness, which may exhibit itself in involvement in gang warfare or other such activities, could lead them to want to hurt themselves. Self-harm. While there is non-suicide self-injury, many times self-harm, cutting behaviors could end up with suicide. Where there is hopelessness or no hope for the future, there is higher risk to suicide. And many of our young men in the nations of the world suffer from hopelessness. Many of them are not on par academically with the females, and sometimes job challenges, or just not performing well in school. In fact, performing well in school is a protective factor. Let's not miss the signal of aggressiveness and irritability as we seek to reach young men. Just being aggressive and irritable may be a warning sign. Let's also consider mood changes and behavior. Young man in a situation where he has lost the will to live, sometimes depressive moods, sometimes unacceptable, other type of unacceptable behavior. Sometimes he may also become engaged in risky behavior that could be life-threatening. And this sometimes speaks to gangs. And I believe the term is precipital suicide. He gets involved in dangerous activities, and he really is hopeless and feels as if it doesn't matter anymore, that he doesn't need to live anymore. And he could become engaged in these risky behavior. Then isolation or feeling alone. It is possible to be in a crowd and yet be lonely. Where the young man isolates himself and is no longer connected with family or friends, that could be a warning sign that he has given up on life. Let's not forget that where there is possession of lethal means of death, the risk of suicide is much higher. So those are the warning signs again in one chart. This is what it looks like right there. Giving away stuff, making funeral arrangement, maybe some other stuff. And of course, we have talked about substance abuse already. Warning signs among young men. I want to encourage us to listen to what they're saying. What is their speech like? What are they saying? Feeling like a burden? Feeling like killing themselves? Experiencing unbearable pain? Feeling trapped? Having no reason to live? That's their talk. Let's listen to them and help them to be able to choose life. Then what is their mood? Are they going through times of depression? Is there loss of interest in activities that they usually find meaningful? Is there irritability, anxiety, humiliation, or rage? And then what's the behavior? Increased use of alcohol or drugs, isolation from friends and family, withdrawal from activities, giving away prized possession, looking for a way to kill themselves, such as searching online for materials or means of death, sleeping too much or too little, visiting or calling people to say goodbye, acting recklessly, and again, aggression. So let's pay attention to the warning signs so that we can help young men to choose life. As I head towards wrap up, I want to share with you the PIN scale developed by a man called Stephen Lansing that can help us to be able to identify those at risk to suicide. The plan, the more detailed the plan, the closer the person is to the suicide risk. Person who knows the place, knows time, or knows the method is much more at risk than the person who just say, oh, I'll find a way to kill myself. The I speaks of the intensity of the method. Many more women attempt suicide, yet more men die by suicide. And one of the reasons is that men use more drastic means. Then, and the nearness of the method. Does the person already have the means of death? And our challenge is to separate the means of death from the boys we're trying to work with. We can step into their world and provide the support that they need to be able to help them to choose life. I want to just share with you, as I've worked with young men and I've looked at reasons contributing to young men becoming suicidal, I think there's a psychological factor. Men internalize stuff. The boys will internalize. Then there's the socialization. Many times we do not give our boys scope to talk about what's bothering them. They have been socialized to think that they shouldn't show emotions. And I say, let's remember that boys hurt and girls hurt too. Then economic factor, where there is limited financial support, their suicide could become a choice. So great is the relationship between suicide and economy that a word has been coined, econocide. And I finally say of those four stuff, why more men kill themselves compared to women, religious factor. Religion is a protective factor against suicide. And we find less boys being involved in religion than girls. And where there is lack of that protective factor, suicide can be the outcome. Let me share with you my book, Confronting Suicide, Helping Teens at Risk. This is the second edition. My doctoral work is in confronting suicidal propensity among Jamaican teenagers. And that's my book there, the second edition. I have given you contact information in the chat if you would like to be able to contact me. Again, I want to say thank you for the opportunity to be a part of helping people in the nations of the world to choose life. Ola, again, congratulations on the work you're doing and all the best. You may contact me as you consider appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. This is This is a very brilliant presentation you have given us today. You can exit your screen so we have more full of it, and you know, you took it all accordingly, and the sequence of the presentations were very superb. Let me be honest with you. I want to request for this slide be sent to me via my email so we can document this for this event when we are preparing the synopsis all together. But on behalf of the team of this Future Voice Challenge, we say a big thank you. If I had to take a recap of what you have just said, it's going to be another section of maybe presentation again. So let's welcome Faith Nashipai from Kenya for her presentation in 12 minutes. Faith, how is your heart this evening in Kenya?
Hi, Ola, how are you?
Yeah, very good to
Good
have
evening,
you.
good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Yes, Ola.
Yeah, how is your heart today?
My heart is beautiful. I feel warm and I'm excited. I'm excited.
Okay. So you want to let us know about the missing qualities now?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. So
Okay, let's
go ahead.
Let's talk more about what you do in 2 minutes, and you have 10 minutes to yourself.
Beautiful. So my name is Faith Nashipai. I lead an organization called Thriving Communities Africa. And at Thriving Communities Africa, we focus on men and boys. For us, we look at men as the solution to our social norms transformation in the country and in the world. And therefore, we look at the man as someone that we need to empower, equip, and work with so that we can have better communities and better societies. We believe in the value of the man in the family space, and we want to call out on every man every other time that we have an opportunity for him to stand firm and speak up and also be the person that he needs to be. I always say man is community. So part of our work that we've done in the country, I like what Sally was saying, because one of the things that I have been able to do in our country is to advocate for the male engagement in our country, and that is for institutionalization of men and boys engagement and inclusion in our gender agenda in the country. So we are at a place where we are setting up systems for this to happen in Kenya, and I'm really excited that this is happening in my time when we are working on this particular agenda. So that is part of what we do, and beyond that, I am a counseling psychologist by profession. I have worked with many men and many young boys, and today I want us to talk about what is this that is missing about the boy child. I look at the World Health Organization data, and by 2021, World Health Organization, of course, when we're looking at data, the first place that we go to is we go to the World Health Organization. And I realized that very little research was done on matters to do with men and boys. Then I also look at what is happening around the suicide data. And part of the facts that we have on this dashboard is that 7,000 people die of suicide every year. 4 people die every 10 seconds internationally. Then we have suicide is the 4th leading cause of death among teenagers, that is 14 to 19-year-olds. Again, approximately 80% of suicides are by male gender. Male gender for me means men and boys. So when we look at all this, one of the things that I've been able to do is to also look at the data, the national data in our country. And I've been able to tease out data from our Kenya police, because according to our laws, suicide is still, and we are negotiating and advocating that we change our laws so that suicide can stop being a crime as it is registered in our laws. So you find that the youngest age that died by suicide in Kenya was a boy who died in 2019, and he was 7 years old. The next one was 10 years old, and the list goes on. So there is need for us to critically look at issues of suicide. I'm glad that our Ministry of Health last month launched our suicide prevention strategy with a desire and a plan or a target of reducing suicide cases by 10% by 2026. That is within the Kenyan environment. Well, let's go down to what we want to talk about. We want to talk about what is this missing ingredient in the boy that we are noticing, even as psychologists, as we deal with men and boys. A population of 80% out of 77% of suicide cases. Clearly, that tells you that we have a challenge with a boy child, and therefore, this is a very important, very, very important forum today. And yes, even though we are talking about prevention, and even though everyone would want to say women, women, and yes, I understand a lot of women attempt suicide, but men die of suicide. So just as Donovan has said, but even as we look at this, let us be alive to the fact that we need to look at who is this who's fully executing this process. And how can we salvage and protect the next generations of the world? So looking at it, I have looked at different databases, and I've also looked at different cause effects of causes of suicide, and what could be in the mind of this person who would want to die by suicide. What stands out for me is the need for connection. We are human beings. And yes, there's a point when Ola felt that he's not connected, and he felt that he does not belong, and he felt that he's not loved because mom went away and he's left alone, and he's a very young boy. And that tells us that there were certain ingredients that resulted to him having a low self-esteem and feeling worthless. And the result of it was getting out of the situation. That is normally the case of many young boys. However, at the point of doing what he was intending to do, there is also a subconscious person that says, I wish someone would come to my rescue. And I wish someone would hear my voice, because for them sometimes it's about speaking up, because we've not taught them how to speak. So in this case, they're trying to speak up. It's just like someone who's fallen into the water and they're trying to raise their hand and say, please help me. And they're just trying to raise their hand through their actions, as Donovan has said. And so you realize that we are not very keen on what they say. We're not very keen on how they express or what they do. And therefore we lose out on a very important time moment. Because at that moment, if someone doesn't step in and show love and embrace and ask why and what time and how do you intend to do this and can I help you, then if those questions are not asked in the right time, or something is not noticed, or someone is not confronted, then you realize that we're going to lose a life. So what is this thing about love? The need for love. You and I know that we want to be loved. We also want to love, and we want to belong. And someone will ask me, why are these very key ingredients? The reality of these ingredients is that they are part of our feelings. They are part of who we are. They are part of us as human beings. So you cannot replace love with something else unless self-hatred, unless self-doubt, unless you're replacing it with something that is corrupting the self-worth or the person that believes in themselves. So when we talk about feeling, I'm looking at a boy who has been maybe deserted by family, and allow me to go through this in this order, that I am going to mix up the reasons why and also the feelings that come with this. So you find a boy who has maybe failed in class and people have laughed at him, and he is not taught how to say, I am feeling bad about what has happened, or he's not sure of how to express himself because he was never taught how to express himself. So what happens with this boy is that he feels like he's an outsider in school. Then he goes home and his parents called him because of his bad performance. So that doubles his feeling of worthlessness and failure and shame. Then in the neighborhood, something happens and now he's fighting with his friends, or maybe his friends have said, you keep failing in school, so we cannot be friends anymore. And you know how small kids can be kiddish and can spread this so fast, and it can really hurt a young boy. So without anywhere to take his emotions and his feelings, what happens? The issues are magnified in his mind. Note, he magnifies this in his mind. So his problem looks big and it looks too humongous that he cannot handle. At this point, that is when, with this kind of a buildup, the boy feels lonely because he has no one to talk to. He feels worthless because he's a failure. And then he feels that he even hates himself. With these kind of communications to his mind and to his person, that is when he now gets to a place of, can I just exit because I'm not worth living? It doesn't matter to me anymore. It doesn't matter to the world anymore. I am not important here. I think the best thing is to just get out of this. I'll give you a good story. A young boy, in Kenya recently, left school, came home, and when he came home, he had been sent home for school fees. But when he came home, he found a mother, a single mother. He found a mother who was very bitter, and she was having her own pressure and her own economic challenges. And so the responses that she gave to the child were close to quarrelsome. Instead of helping the child manage the situation, calming him and telling him, it is okay, we are going to manage this. I know we are having a challenge, but please give me more time. Instead of going that way, the mother was like, you're disturbing me and all that, and becoming very quarrelsome. So the boy looked at the mother and told the mother, you know what, mom? I will not disturb you again. I'll not be a problem to you again. Unfortunately, the following morning, that child was found dead in the room. So the environment that we bring these children and we get them to matters a lot. What am I saying? When the mindset shifts, the attitude of hope, the attitude of working things out shifts to hopelessness, the challenge becomes too problematic. The problem is magnified, and it becomes a challenge to a young mind to manage. Now, what are we saying here? We're simply saying that when we are talking about feeling good about
You're frozen there.
we have an interaction with others, and we have self-concept, which is equals to self-concept and stress level. So if we are able to manage the stress level, and if you're able to work well with the self-concept, then, and if we're able to interact with others in our environment, then we have a good boy. The environment is normally set by many of us, adults. Children come into our environment. We bring them into the environment by virtue of being parents. So we are having domestic violence in that environment. We don't care of how we train them and how we impact their lives, and that is what misses out. I want to speak to the boy child. I want to speak about the boy child because many times we are taking care of the girl. We are pampering the girl. We do everything for the girl as a child, but we do not look at the boy as a child. We have forgotten the boy as a child. And so you find that in many homesteads, especially in Africa, especially in Africa, most of our African culture, we say that we have to harden the boy. So in the process of hardening this boy, at 7 years, you can send him to open the door at midnight or after 9 because he's a man. This is a 7-year-old child. Then you realize that the boy, especially right now, you'll find that in struggling economies, you'll find that the boy is halfway working and halfway going to school. I have heard of stories where boys and girls go to the same school, But then, and they're coming from the same home. These are brother and a sister. The brother is not given fare to go to school, but the girl is given fare to get her to school. So another school I went to told one boy was not being given money for lunch, but the sister was being given money for lunch. So you realize that we are having inequalities even at the family space. A boy will stay with a shoe that is torn or an innerwear that is torn for a whole year, but the girl will get changes every 3 or 6 months. So what are we saying even as we build this, as we socialize the boy, that he's supposed to be hardened even when it comes to his own rights, and making him feel better, making him feel that he belongs, making him feel that he's wanted. I think for me, the society needs to change on how we've been looking at the boy. And the society needs to start looking at the boy as someone who is a child, who has a heart, and a heart that needs to be taken care of. I also want to speak to fathers, because many times fathers fail the boy. The boy
you try and hand up in 2 minutes so that we can move to the next.
Yes, Ola, thank you. The father is the person who molds the boy in a big way, because he's a big role model. But now we are having a situation, we're having a lot of single families, single mother families. How will men take care of this boy? I always say a lion can only be raised by a lion. There are things that sons can only learn from fathers, and there are things that sons can also learn from mothers. But when it comes to the emotional molding of the boy, he also needs to be molded by the father. He needs to be accepted. He needs to feel accepted and loved by the father as he is loved and accepted by the mother. So for me, I want to say, even from a psychological perspective, do we want to look at our socialization and our culture as a contributor to suicide and to suicides among young people? And we want to look at how we are raising the boy from the family space as a factor that is leading to high rates of suicides among boys and men. Back to you, Ola, and thank you so much for having me on this platform.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much. That was eloquent enough, and you highlighted a lot of things that to us as a group, as a people, we know what is missing now. The need for love, the need for connection, the need for equity at home for both boys and girls that we raise, and the need for the fathers to come back to their responsibilities when it comes to emotional nurturance of the male child. Thank you for that brilliant presentations. We are partners. Faith and I have been partners for over a year now, and we've been on this call almost every time together. So Faith, we will always reach out to you, and thank you so much for this time, and we really appreciate you. From the synopsis, you will get our take from you, and you can watch this broadcast on YouTube. We're going to upload it there because it's so rich that I don't know what to say. This is one of the best of our conferences ever. So thank you, Faith, for enriching this particular event and this topic. That being said, let's briefly move to our next speaker. That is the role of the community in suicide prevention for boys and men, from Andrew McDonald from Canada. Andrew, hey, sir, you there for us?
Thank you, Ola. Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here with all of you who we share this huge concern for what's going on in the world. And I would love to get to know us as a group and not only our individual work. So I'm going to take a different tack and really provide you with a story that came to me after Ola invited me here. It's an invented story, a made-up story of two boys who were raised in different circumstances. One boy is raised on land that belongs to his family and his ancestors going way back. He lives there still with his parents. He remembers his grandparents. He knows the stories of the ancestors who lived there generations ago. He knows the people in the neighborhood. He knows his tribe and he's proud of it. And he looks out in the world from there. That's one boy. And the other boy, he moved to the city when he was a baby, and he lived with his family in very different makeshift circumstances in the city. The people around him are continually coming and going, different people. He only knows his father and his mother and his sisters. They seldom talk about the village and the life before and the people and the stories that were there. Or if they do, it's only in very vague terms because everybody's trying to get ahead in town, trying to survive. So two different boys. And in my metaphor, my story here, most boys in the world now, I'm calling from Canada, by the way, but most boys are like the second boy whose family has forgotten the past glories of men, the past stories of men, the past values of men. And I suggest that for me, one of the reasons that boys are doing so very badly, struggling and unsure of who they are, and having our elevated suicide rates compared to girls, is because we've lost the connection, or the boys have lost the connection to the men of the past and who their people are. They've lost connection to the greatness of the past and stories of heroism, of service, of being a gift to the community, of being proud and loved by women because of their standing in the world. And that used to be something that men and boys grew up with as normally, like the first boys in the story. So I suggest that nothing wonderful can happen for the young man without making some connection inside to the men of the past, the men who came before. So one way that we adults can help with that is that we ourselves honor the men of the past and support people in doing this. We take charge ourselves of how we view men and talk about men and see and celebrate the goodness of men, who of course are one half of the adults in the world. And we share that with the boys. We tell them who they resemble from the past, who their own characteristics are like from their ancestors. And somewhere down there, we know that the boys are deeply interested in knowing that. We can have boys talk to each other about the men that they admire. One example of that most of us, certainly the men will recognize, I think, is hearing about the sports figures who excite them, their heroes. I remember myself as a boy in Canada, where hockey was the thing. Then even the names of the great hockey players, Rocket Richard, Boom Boom Geoffrion, and Jacques Plante, were heroes that lived in a special kind of heaven to us. So boys want those stories and those heroism. So really, in a way, I'm talking about the soil in which boys are growing up in the communities. And I want to say too that I do family constellations, which is a kind of work that works with the larger field of us and our ancestors. And something that became very clear to me from that is that the men of old are not gone. They are not gone. The men of old have been around, and our tribal histories have been around for hundreds of thousands of years. And the lore and the knowing of the tribe is deep, and deep in the boy's psyche. They have it there. It's there even if we can't see it at first glance, and if we've forgotten it ourselves. The forgetting may have come from a move to the city, to get back to my metaphor, but it's just a thin layer on top. But because boys are so tuned to the now, they pick up from the media and what they see around them and stories stories from perhaps from their parents, that there is no larger, deeper story, but it's there. It's absolutely there. And the thin coat of conditioning that's over the top is thin indeed. So can point out to the boys that they too are like the heroes of old. They have the intelligence, the skill, including the physical skill to find their way. They can be one of those boys who give their amazing gift and are celebrated for it. This covering on the top of "I can't do it," and again, this is a metaphor, a story that I'm offering, but it's really been around so strongly for the last 60 years or so, the last 3 generations. It's so recent and so thin. But unless we see through that veil to the greatness of the past controls us. All of us, and this is true for us too, as workers with boys, we too have been formed by this modern spirit and often forgotten the past. So I'd remember the good past to young men and to ourselves. It may include their tribal or Christian God. It may be the connection to anything that's greater than us. If we're uncles and aunts or elders in the community, part of our work is to remember the past and the men of the past, to speak well of them and encourage the boys to take their own place among them. The break from the past has caused enormous difficulty for boys, not to mention for everyone else and for certainly for me and perhaps for others of us here. It's the modern story. Finding a way to a story that can build on the good past will be the boys' challenge, and we can help with that. So that's the thought that came to me in response to Ola's wonderful invitation. And I just want to say how excited I am to be with this international community, because I think that it is the connections between us and referring to a larger whole and being part of a larger whole that makes us feel less isolated, us feel more connected and able to do our work far, far better than if we were in isolated silos ourselves. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. Looking forward to hearing the rest of us.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you so much for your metaphoric illustrations. It sinks deep into us, and I love the way you make such expressions in terms of relating to the past and how this can help in resolving issues of the boy child in our various communities. We look forward to more conversation like this with you. I have the opportunity to connect with you, and I hope you will leave your information to every other member on the panel who want to reach out to you and how we can collectively work together. Like you said from the beginning of opening this conversation up, it's not all about this, it's not all about us and what we want to offer to the community of boys and men. So it's an honor to have you here. We appreciate you deeply, and we look forward to always connecting with you again and again. I want to thank you for serving at this age of your life. It's so, so humble for me as a young man, looking at having so much to give to the world. And going forward from now, I want to invite my dad from New York, Uncle Mike, is on board from the Reach That Network. He will be doing a lot of support in terms of moderating. But that being said, we have to go to India. India, are you ready for us? Hannibal. Hannibal, are you ready for us from India?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay. So you have 12 minutes by 17:30 my time. We'll be wrapping up your section. So thank you. And you'll be speaking on talking with boys about suicide.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Greetings to everyone. And first of all, I'll just like to really appreciate and thank Ola for letting me be a part of this wonderful discussion. And with so excellent speakers who are working tirelessly with this particular issue. So really appreciate that and really thank you a lot. My name is MRA Anirban Sinha. MRA stands for Men's Rights Activist, and I represent an organization named All Bengal Men's Forum and All India Boys and Men's Forum. So these two are the same different organizations that we have, and it's in India. So we are led by our president, MRA Nandini Bhattacharjee, and she being a woman, she's actively supporting this particular movement in India. And she's the one who has guided us to fight for the men, who made us understand that, yes, this is high time that we really give importance to this particular issue of uh, the society, and not only in India, but globally. About our organization, we basically are working for the empowerment of the boy child and men. And now, when it comes to suicide, there is a lot to speak about it because this is one of the most important factors because that's life threatening. It, it's killing the men, it's killing the human, rather. Uh, if we talk about the numbers and stuff, my fellow speakers over here, they have already spoken wonderful topics and with great data. Thanks to everyone, Sally, Rush, Donovan, sir, everyone. So it was really great hearing Andrew with all the data and stuff. So wonderful. Uh, Now, talking to boys, we basically have been working for the suicides. We basically work for the complete empowerment. So, among which suicide is also one of a big factor. And what we found is like we need to speak up with the boys. It needs to be spoken a lot because the moment a mother expects that a son is coming, at least for India, right away the expectations that okay, a son is coming, the expectation starts. So he's going to come up, he's going to study in this school, he's going to study this, he's going to go to this college. The dad thinks, the mother thinks he's going to go there, he's going to work, and end of the day responsibilities, he's going to get married and take uh, the responsibilities of the family and for us. But wherein we look for the woman, it's quite different because the society expects that the girl, okay, she's going to go away to a different house or to a different place. So she needs to be, taken care of more. Now, about speaking with boys, there are n number of issues. What we discovered, like, boys generally go through a lot of, as in my few speakers said, that we don't hardly speak. So, boys, we need to go ahead and build a rapport with them. We need to understand where they are going wrong. Now, suicide, if we check with the data globally, someone shared the data. I'll just go with India. For the last 2 years, we know the entire world have been going through the pandemic. During the pandemic, in 2020-21, we had 418 suicides per day recorded according to the government data. 418 suicides, out of which 397 suicides were by boys and men together, wherein the boys' count was lesser, because the men's count was more, and it was the daily age workers. Now, if we look on with speaking with boys, there are a lot of factors. It's not always like, you have family disputes. There are issues wherein you go down to a school, a boy is being bullied, and he is unable to share that particular pain or trauma that he's going through every day in school. So one fine day, he approaches the parents and he finds that they are also busy. They don't have time for their son. And someone said that, yes, we give importance to the daughter. On the other hand, like, mm, someone said, like, we give money to the daughter for lunch In the same way, the daughter is given importance, is heard, but the son is not being heard. So this guy starts building up a tendency of suicide. People who get into drugs, they get into these suicidal tendencies. So we have also come across people now, they have gone so much into these online games that young guys who are just 14, 15 years of age, they are committing suicide for not winning online games. We have been through such. I myself, I'm a survivor of suicide. I had tried a couple of times to do that. I don't know, but it's God's grace and my parents' grace that they saved me in the. I'm working. I'm still alive, and for the last so many years, I've forgotten everything and build up a new life. So, and I felt that speaking is a big factor that needs to be done. Fathers, we see if we check on with the data with India, I'm not getting into the global data. With India, if we check on with the data for the last 1 year, in last 1 year, we have 37,000 suicides which have been done by the fathers. And the main reason that comes in are that the fathers have been deprived of meeting their children. So this is a big issue that is there. So we get to understand that a guy, and it's not shocking, like, these fathers who are committing suicides, these 37,000 people, out of these 37,000, there would be again more boys, at least half of it, at least 17,000 boys who are getting deprived of their father's love. So these 17,000 is getting added up to the next year's count as well, because they are getting deprived of their father's love and care. So these are things. We don't talk about the good touch and bad touch in a school for the boys, which is again a cause for the suicide. Because unless a boy understands and learns that what is a good touch and what's a bad touch, which we generally do it for the girls, but we really don't do it for the boys. So boys really don't understand that which part of the day they are also being sexually molested, assaulted. They generally do. I have seen it in schools in India. I have been to the US. I've been to the few of the Asian countries. I've checked on over there as well. But yes, caretakers, school our wardens, and seniors. They go ahead and bully and even molest boys, and they don't understand that what's being sexually assaulted. These guys, grow up in vain. They turn up to be like deprived and go through anxiety attacks. They go through a big depression, which causes them and have suicidal tendencies being brought up. If we check on with the any uh, prisons that we have. So in the prisons, if we check on with the prisons as well, if you check on with the data, if my fellow mates agree to this, if we check on with the data, we would find that the boys that are born in the, who are in the prison, not because of their crime, but maybe because of their mother who had committed a crime. So they are in the jail with them. These guys who grow up and are in the prisons are the ones who either commit a lot of suicide or either come out and become kind of criminals, or have some kind of tendencies which gets them into drugs and overdoses and lets them come into such a situation wherein they commit suicide. So these are really alarming for all of us. And this is something that needs to be really worked on. So we are all working on this. And preferably, if we talk on this particular thing about suicide, there is a lot to speak about. There is a lot. We just cannot finish it in just one discussion. And it's not going to happen in a fortnight that we can make changes. And as someone said, and as Sally said, that we need to first go ahead and bring about the changes in our country. We need to approach our governments, our respective governments, We as an organization, under our president's leadership, Nandini Bhattacharya's leadership, we have approached and provided different, PLs to the state government, to the central government of having a particular men's commission. And these people need to be heard, because if we want to save the boys, if we need to save the society, we need to give it a big attention. And it needs to come not only from the men, but also from the women, because we all know that a woman is incomplete without the last three letters, men. It's also there. And a man is not complete without a woman. And even a dispute between a husband and wife is a cause for the suicide of their son. They need to understand. We all need to understand this. As a husband, as a wife, we all might have differences between us, but that should not hamper our child. The child needs to get that love of a mother and a father, what he or she needs to deserves. And wherein we are working for the boys, it's our responsibility to make sure that we approach schools, we approach colleges, we approach the corporates, because a lot of suicides are happening at the corporates because of false allegations. There are false allegations each and every day in different segments. And we just had the entire world shaken by Johnny Depp's case. So we all were working about it. We all went through the trials. We saw what exactly was happening. So he was someone who had the guts to go ahead and fight. If I would have been there, I wouldn't have been able to do that. Probably I had tried to commit suicide twice. The second time I did, it was the worst, that the doctors gave a time that yes, it's impossible, but it's God's grace that and my parents' blessings that I'm sitting here and speaking with you all today and working. So it's
Thank
something
you.
that really needs to be done. Thank you, everyone. It was a big pleasure and a wonderful, enriched discussion that I have been through. Would definitely like to be a part of such discussions in the near future. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, thank you, Aniba. Thank you so much. You know, we are super glad to have people like you come up to share their experiences of being a survivor of suicide, and highlighting what is necessary for us to share with our boys so that they don't become a victim of what we have experienced. I love it when people talk from their lived experiences in such a way that it can become like a protective knowledge for these young boys to find information that will help them in averting the decision to end it all or take their lives. Your experiences have so far been very good to hear. And you talked about the support of your families, the grace that is upon your life, like Dr. Drovan Thomas said earlier, that religiosity is one of the protective factors. And that's one of the things we have to remember all of the time and see how we can get our boys to embrace some of these protective factors like you did. And hopefully, like I said, we always love to work together with your organizations. We appreciate your support from the past. We thank you so much, and we will continue to work with you as we expand this conversation across the world. And hopefully, I want you to give my greetings to everyone in your country until we have the opportunity to meet face-to-face and one-on-one. That being said, I'm so much eager to bring on this platform my father all the way from Sedona in Arizona. He's such a man I love with all of my heart. His vibrations is another father I'm proud to tell you I have in the world. And as I said, I want to bring on board this man that have invested so much in Africa. Thank you, sir. Bruce Fox.
It's
Glad
good
to
to
have
be
you.
with you. Thank you very much. It's great to be with you all. And I am looking forward to discussing with you suicide from a different standpoint, probably. I've spent 50 years of my life as a conductor of symphonies, operas, ballets, but musical organizations. And there's something very interesting that I will tell you about later. There's a connection between the arts and kids who can survive suicide. My task is to give practical ways to meet this problem. And I'm presenting this amongst professionals here with the hopes that the tape of this will be made available so that just ordinary people, the people who actually have to deal with their people in the neighborhood that might be suicidal. What is it that, may I say the term, real people can do? Well, let me talk to the real people, and those of us who are the pros, maybe we might have something to learn also too. I want to say that practical ways and practical things to do to prevent suicide means that all of us need to be aware of the problems. That will require that each of us has done our own work. We each have baggage. Are we willing to unload our baggage? Is it in fact our community baggage, our personal baggage, our cultural and governmental baggage that actually prevents us from stepping in and doing an intervention that could well be under our control? But in the old Bible story about the Good Samaritan, are we one of the Pharisees that, oh, I don't have time right now, or, oh, there's an expert who will take care of this, I must be moving on? Or are we the Samaritan that takes the time, no matter what, to deal with the problem at hand? So we need to talk about what the problem at hand really is. And I will give you another suggestion that possibly will be a little controversial, but I don't think so once you listen to it. My sense is that the missing ingredient here that has come up so often, and every point that has been made wraps around the fact that there is a feeling state. There is an emotional component to this, which is not psychology. We end up understanding that our brain is sort of like the hard drive of a computer. And the program, the app, if you will, is whatever emotion is coming up at the time. If one feels hopeless, helpless, despondent, bullied, the whole list that we have been talking about for an hour and a half, there's a sense of held in qualities. That's the program. And the brain is charged with kicking out rationale and reason and to give theory and logic to this confusion of emotions that are embodied in this suicidally intended person. Now, the other half of what I do for the last 50 years professionally, for the last 40 years, I've also been a type of a therapist. Now, I say a type of. It started as a massage therapist because I have bad, severe back issues and I needed to understand how to keep myself in shape. I quickly understood that there was more to than just the physical nature of problems, that people are tense because they're holding on to difficult, challenging emotions that they don't feel they can either express or feel, or as we would say, complete, to complete an emotion. If something's painful, we shut it down. And all of the situations that we've discussed this morning, they are painful to the growing man boy. He has no way to, we're taught, don't feel, don't say, don't cry, don't express yourself. Well, there's a very common good phrase that we use, and that is simply, feelings buried alive never die. They continue to affect our physiology and our psychology. So the wonderful work that is done to help with rational thinking, trying to understand it, that is wonderful for that particular level. But have you ever noticed that I feel great until the next time I'm triggered? There's often a next time. How do we deal with that which causes the next time? That means the embodied emotion. Well, let me get back to the subject that I'm really trying to get to. And that is practical things for real people. I mean, not the professionals, and the organizations are terribly important. We have to have them to bring public awareness. But what can the real person do? Number one, do your own work. Admit to and address your own emotional baggage, because that, in fact, is clouding your own ability to respond to life all around you. And the people who are going to be committing suicide are all around you. So where are these vulnerable boys? They're probably in your own family. They're probably your relatives' kids, your uncles, your uncle's kids, which would be all of your cousins. They're your neighbors' kids. They're everywhere. Everywhere there is a boy, there is suppression of emotions. And then an undeveloped psychology, an inability to make sense of life. So these kids are all around you. So just open your eyes and be aware. And don't let your own issues cloud your ability to either see, hear, or take an action. Well, what are you going to do? What actually are you going to do? Let's first figure out, what do boys really need? In all cultures, everywhere, certainly here in the US, and I've heard it now from around the world, boys have two special requirements. Number one, they must have a role model. And if the role model is not their dad or someone who they respect highly and want to model their lives after, then they will find a role model. And 9 times out of 10, it is probably going to be to their own detriment and contribute to the problem. Part of our job is to live our own lives in a manner that is worthy of adulation, worthy of respect, worthy of honor. Boys will see that. They will also be suspicious if they detect 1 degree of, you're just saying this because you feel you have to say it, any degree of phoniness, or that this is a fraud. I cannot trust this man. I'm already in pain, and now I feel I'm being taken advantage of in some manner. So boys in need are highly suspicious. So as a role model, please unburden yourself. Be a real person. Be genuine. Reach out, connect, listen. This is what kids are, boys and girls, and most adults who have actually never grown up emotionally. They're still boys and girls. They don't connect and they don't listen because nobody listens to them. There's no heart to heart. You know that vibration. We call it love. We call it all sorts of things, but that heart to heart connection is missing in boys and men looking to end it all. Finally, you can take some compassionate action. What is that compassionate action? Simply, as we've said before, listen. If there's a psychological need, provide some sort of avenue to professional counseling. If there is an emotional need, find an avenue where those emotions can be completed. I will share a website on the chat that discusses this whole issue of emotions and how Eastern and traditional cultures have, in fact, been now looked at by modern science and realize they're one and the same. Quantum physics and Taoist understandings are identical in so many ways that there now are beginnings of therapies, of processes where the emotions that are giving rise to the suicide and so many other physical problems can actually be dealt with, can be brought to the surface, can be completed. And so that program, that app, no longer requires the brain to kick out negative ideation. The second, I said role models are as important. The second thing is every boy needs to know there is something bigger than me. There's something out there that's strong. There's something out there that has purpose, and I want to be a part of that. It helps them step out of their role. So sports and group performing arts, whether it's a choir or a band or something, those two items, sports and arts, they're immediately available if we channel these boys in that direction. So I really would like to say also, there is a cultural ingredient to all of this. Ola kindly mentioned that I have been working in Africa. I have, oh, this is going to get difficult, but I'll just force through because there are emotions and they come very close to the surface for me, always. I have basically 3 sons in Africa. And if you count other people who call me Baba, I have at least 5 sons. And Ola, you make 6. But my number one son is from Gambia. I'll just call him Keba because that is his first name, but keep his privacy. Keba was orphaned as a youth, grew up basically on the streets because it's a Gambia and it's on the ocean. So he's one of the many Beach Boys. The Beach Boys is not a musical group, as some of us know. The Beach Boys in Rwanda are the poor, are the indigent, are the ones that have no parents, have no fathers, have no means of support. They live in tents or they live off of the goodness of tourists, whatever it is. Keba was one of those. Keba now lives in Germany. He's a permanent resident in Italy. He and I together have bought a home in the Gambia. I am so proud of my son Keba because he could have taken his life multiple times. But there's something in that culture that would not let him. And he is still the strongest, most inspirational young man in my life. I'm proud to call him my son. I have 2 sons in Rwanda who I don't support to the same degree as I do Keba, but these young men were both affected dramatically by the genocide in 1994. Both of them were born in 1992. One of them grew up on the streets and graduated from college. The other one, whose father was taken away because of the genocide, also went to college. So, and now in Uganda, I have my spiritual brother, which I believe is probably, that's another whole long story, but I spent 2 weeks with him this summer. He was an orphan at 12 and had 7 other siblings. He and all of his siblings could easily have been dejected and upset, but there's something in the culture that said, you fight on. He started an organization called Children's Voice Network that supports poor families, teaching them how to sustain gardening and raise small animals. It gives them a purpose. not all cultures have that. And I agree with the gentleman from India that suggested, well, several that's come up. What's the percentage difference of suicide in boys in a rural setting where there's traditional sense of continuity that goes on, and then the urban setting where that is lacking? And I have a strong suspicion that Sally Burris probably has all of those numbers at hand and can tell us that, in fact, the urban setting is much more prone to this. Well, I said in closing that sports and arts do something unusual to a boy and a girl also. But have you ever sat in a concert and suddenly there's this time where there's an emotional depth and sudden clarity that time starts to stand still? The world we know dissolves, and we somehow for a while we're freed of our history and concerns. And at the end of the concert, we feel more complete, a little more hopeful, a little more understanding. Well, that's not just for the audience. Boys, men, women, and girls who also are active in the arts have that same response. It gives them purpose. It gives them drive. So step out of your comfort zone. Be genuine. Find out what resources exist in your area, lifelines, then volunteer, and don't forget the role of nutrition in all of this so that the machinery can actually work properly. Obviously, all of us could go on for hours in our own particular sphere. I know better than to do that, and I've already gotten the high sign from Ola. Ola, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, everyone, for what you've contributed. You've enlarged my soul, my experience, and I will send a particular link to all of you that will allow you to follow up if, in fact, you have a sense that this emotional component must be addressed. There is a way. We can talk about it at your free will. Okay, thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. In fact, you actually came from a different dimension, like you said, indeed. And that was worrying because a lot has been said from the psychological point of view, which you refer to, and as well looking at our emotional baggage. And the idea of bringing in something like larger than the individual boy child, connecting him to the purpose larger than him, for me is the take I get from it. Because when you are able to make them see that, even as an adult, we can see the larger picture of what is bigger than us. It tries to expand us and give us the courage that life continues with hope. And that in a form kills despair, because even when you are going through some certain suffering, you know that you know the meaning why you are going through that. So I kind of want to thank you for that. Let me bring my uncle, my dad too. I have a lot of dad on this call. I have Andrew, I have Uncle Mike, I have Ruth from Sedona. I don't know, I've been so blessed this time of my life that the fathers have been seeking for all my years. They're just showing up. So thank you, Uncle Mike, for coming on the board. We want to really have your input in today's conversation. Before I go to my brother, Jonathan Mambodi, glad to have you. We appreciate you too. So, Uncle Mike.
Well, Ola, thank you for this opportunity. I'm calling from the USA, and it's a pleasure to be among such caring, and just the heartfelt conversation is just so powerful, and it's a blessing to be among such wonderful, caring people. But I just want to say part of my work that I do is mentoring kids in homeless kids in shelters. And I've done that for quite a few years, but I always remember when I was working with one child and I told the therapist, I don't know what to do for this child. I'm at a loss. And the therapist said, Mike, he has an endless pit of needs. Anything you can do, just showing up, just your presence is bringing healing to him. And I'm glad that over 20 years I took on that challenge. And I think I'm not going to be long, but I'm just so encouraged to hear the many thoughts that's being echoed here. We need to create a safe place for our boys. We need to let them know that we care, we see them, and we're willing to listen to them, like Russ was saying so beautifully. And we must give of ourselves. And I like what Russ said. He's so on point when he talks about we must deal with our own issues so it does not cloud what we can do for the next generation. And so, Ola, thank you for bringing us together. This international forum is so powerful. It just shows that we are all hurting all over the world and that we can make a difference. And it's just a wonderful conversation that we're having. We must save the next generation. We must let them know that they do have purpose. There is hope. And that's the challenge that we're finding more and more. They see us struggling and not dealing and suppressing our challenges. And they're trying to carry our load and their load. And it's just overwhelming. And it brings them to that state of just considering to give up hope. So thank you. Once again, I want to thank everyone that's on this call. It's so powerful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Ola.
Thank you, Uncle Mike. We really appreciate everyone. I have Edna Waters from Jamaica, I have Patricia Taylor, but let me go to Jonathan. Jonathan, yes, good to have you with us. You have one or 2 minutes for us before we close this in 5 minutes.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan. Ross and I are good buddies. So thank you, Ross, for inviting me. You know, suicide is very close to my heart. I have one brother committed suicide, one in fact 3. One literally drank a poisonous substance and 2 refused medical help. So that's literally, in fact, he was pulling out the tubes from the machine. So I know what it's like for suicide. I even had suicidal thoughts. And a lot of this stem from, I saw a person made a comment here from me, in fact, I think it was Sally here. It stemmed from society pressure, especially at home. I was an athlete. I used to play soccer, I used to play cricket and so on. And especially the siblings of my father wanted me to be at the best. And when I don't perform, a lot of pressure on me. So and that had me in this shame and guilt mode, you know, why I didn't do any better. And plus society, because I played sports for school. So, and I think she mentioned about toxic masculinity. All of this is correct. I shared this with a group a couple months ago, masculine group. And it does affect your mindset. I'm referring to shame and peer pressure. And if you as a boy, I'm referring to myself as a teenager, not able to deal with this, it's very, very difficult. I'm the last child out of 14 and 9 of us were boys. And my 8 brothers, I was under pressure to perform, and it wasn't an easy road for me. However, you know, I'm grateful that I had good teachers at school to help me to overcome all of these peer pressure and guilt and all of these things that I was experiencing. So yeah, suicide for me, it's very, very close to my heart. And it's not easy when you have family members committing suicide and you're in the center of it, you know. So yeah, thank you for inviting me, Russ, and thank you for allowing me to share. Appreciate it.
Yeah, please leave your details in the chat so we can connect with you for the next event coming up on October the 22nd. Yeah, so you can have that in your calendar if you are available. basically it's going to be for toxic mothering. So that's information will be out next week, so we can draw more mothers on board. Dr. Edna's from Jamaica. How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
How is your heart this afternoon?
My heart, it's all in one place and very excited. Because as you know, the group that I'm with, we are women who, I'm a woman who has been called to work with men. And so it is so fascinating to hear the things that are being said. Like the first thing that hit me was when someone said, boys need to be taught to express themselves. This is what I got out of what she said. And we are, that is something I'm now working on. You might have remembered that youngster who had come on. He has come on a few times from Barbados. I won't call his name. And I've been working with him on speech and all kinds of things up to yesterday, because I see him as one who can really help his peers. And so that was great. There's some other things. Well, I've sent messages to individuals. So we're going to be talking. We're now ready to have something called father to father. But what it is like we're saying, it's like taking tales out of school. We want fathers to come together and hear what the children have been saying about them, you know, so that we can see what help do the fathers need. We had had something called, it was a father's vent, where what we're saying is, we the women, this is what we're saying about you. Come and tell us your side of the story. So I'm saying all of that to say I'm just excited. Maybe what I'm saying is not making a lot of sense, but we're gonna be talking. We're gonna be talking to you, men. Thank you so much. Ross Fox, I also have a theater orientation, you know? And so when you started, I mean, I need to talk to you on this, right? Because, you know, I understand what you're saying. It's so interesting how you started, you know? You're saying, okay, so we have all the theories, okay? We know everything. We have all the experience, but there is something we're not getting. Thank you for bringing this to us. I'm going to be talking with you. All right, so Ola, don't get me started now, just to let you know, I'm excited.
Yeah, Dr. Egner, that was good. Everyone can mute yourself so that we have this time together. Sally, and I think Patricia Taylor, may we have your contribution? Patricia? Unmute yourself. You're muted, Patricia. Please. Please.
Turn your mic on. Your mic is okay.
Unmute yourself, ma'am. Oh, we can.
It wasn't allowing me to unmute because I think you muted me.
Oh, sorry about it.
That's okay. I'm grateful to be in this setting. Actually, I'm actually on the road because I just took my son to basketball practice, but I'm still sitting in the car listening, and I am so thrilled. Various different persons spoke differently to me, and like the last person who spoke before Dr. Edna, I can attest to what suicide does to the family also, because I had an uncle who committed suicide, and I myself attempted suicide. So it is really dear to me, and the various illustrations. I work with men in the prison system and the homeless system here in New York. So I know how it feels. And when men tell you how they get to this place, it was really because as a child, no one tapped into some of the issues they are having. So I'm really so excited for a forum like this. I mean, I had so many takeaways and nuggets that will help me throughout this, journey.
Oh, so nice to hear that. That touches me. And that's the purpose of why we set this up, so that people can come over and find education, inspiration
Yes.
to move to the next stage. Let me go to my
Thank you.
brother,
Thank you.
Mwanguzi Musa. Hello, brother, from the motherland, Africa. Can we hear your contribution in just like 2 minutes? We close this and everyone. Thank you so much. Musa, are you there? Can you unmute yourself, Musa? Oh goodness, we're having challenges with that. Yes. Oh, Ma'am Sally, you have a final word for us to make your contributions now? Sally, are you there? It's muted. Oh, God. Can we all unmute ourselves? Can we everybody unmute yourself, please? Dr. Ednas, can you hear me?
I'm hearing you. Yes, I am.
Yeah. Aniba, God, okay. Yes, Sally, are you back to us? Can you? Okay. I'm asking everybody to unmute now so you can unmute yourself. Okay. So, Musa, are you still there?
Thank you. Thank you, Ola.
Yeah. So, Sally, we're glad to have you. Leave us with a note so we wrap up. Oh, Fadila Umiteru, thank you for joining us from Nigeria. Sally, you have your last word for us for today. What will it be?
I think it is to be conscious that you have to give men permission to have their voice sometimes, because young men have been silenced by a systematic narrative that comes at them from many avenues, things like social media, things like TV, policies that always identify any issues in society are going to be directed from men, not from women. And I think they've been so silenced that I think a lot of us need to consider how we give men and boys permissions to tell us what they think and how they feel, and to ask their opinions and to encourage them to speak. One quick trick that I've done, I ask young men that I work with and boys to have the drop the mic moment, because men are very shy about saying how they feel or what they think. They tend to be silent and set backwards. So I put this thing out and it's called drop the mic. So if you hear somebody saying something negative about men and boys, like, oh, the problem's always with them, they're always shouting, they're always disruptive, so then, or some sort of pseudo personality is placed on men, that men turn around and say, well, actually, I'm a man. And in this situation, this is what I think, this is what I feel. And I just wanted to say that to you. Then just turn around, go and grab a drink, divert your attention away and leave them with those thoughts, because it is everybody's responsibility to say when something isn't right. There's no permissions to disrespect men and boys. There should be none in society. So it's about us all problem solving together. And I so enjoyed listening to all of you. I mean, you're all amazing. I've really, really enjoyed every second. It's gone in like 5 minutes. And I think that's a sign of when you've really enjoyed something, that it's just gone too quick. So just that's it. And thank you so much for inviting me.
All right, thank you, Sally. Thank you, everyone from all over the world, from India, from UK, from US, from Canada, from Zambia, Zimbabwe, for coming together on this call. I appreciate you deeply. You mean so much to me. Without you, this event wouldn't have been enriched as it is. I want more of you on a monthly basis so that we can amplify these boys and men issues in such a way that we can leave something great for the next generation to be proud of us, that we did this for them, and they have something they can refer to or take from there. With that being said, I don't know how to close events like this because it's so awesome. Andrew, Rose, do you have any one minute for us? So everybody take 1 minute and we say goodbye to each other, one of us. And if you can by any means take a picture or a screenshot of what we have now, I will appreciate that you send that to me, and that would be good. So that, but Jonathan, I really need to connect with you, honestly. Love, peace, and harmony, brother. Yeah. So we need to connect, and Rose, we need to connect. I just want to tell you from my heart, I love you. You've been a part of my life, and I appreciate it deeply. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being there. Thank you for showing up. You know, my boys are thanking you for, and if you have the opportunity, we run literacy centers for boys. We have Servitry Center for teenage boys and girls. So if you want the opportunity to speak with them, you are open to it. Sally have been on call with them. Uncle Mike has been on call with them. So if you want to speak with these kids, you are open to speak with them Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays of every week between the hour of 3:30 to 5:30 Nigerian time. We'll be glad that you become like a nurturance, positive nurturance for them. And I'm going to reach out to each and every one of you because of our next event coming up in November, how you can be of help and support to ensure that some of these boys have the opportunity, like Ruth said, to be involved in the sporting activity. So thank you so much. Ruth, you have one word to close for us and Andrew, then we close this section for today. And I go back to my brother in India. Maybe he speaks his Indian language to just close this for us too as well. Who knows? Rose. You're muted, Rose. Yeah, I have unmuted everyone. So you can mute yourself. Unmute now, Rose. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, yes, we're unmuted now. Jonathan, may I have your number, please? Can you just put it in the chat, please? I've been trying to.
Sure, Yanni.
May I ask a question for Ola?
Okay.
Ola, could you just simply assemble a list of all of our names and probably email addresses would be the best at this point, and then send it out to us? We are all resources for each other, and I don't want to miss this opportunity.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Please leave your email address. Leave everyone on the call right now. Please leave your email address.
Excuse me.
Musa, you want to speak now? Yeah, we are back.
Yeah.
Musa, okay, 1 minute.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mwanguzi Musa from Uganda, who was born in 1994. I'm glad to see you, to meet you. In fact, I've learned a lot from you, which I've been missing many years. The thing which you have been talking to, it seems that you have been talking about my life. But I'm so happy to have a friends, brothers, father, who are in different countries. You know, for me, I was born in that year, which I've been told you, but I've lost my parent. It was 2004. Also, I was about to suicide myself with my sister. But, you know, God never forget people. Somebody from nowhere came and rescued my life with my sister. That is Stephen from Child Voice Network in Uganda. I know my father Russell, I've been talking about it, and it needs like 1 hour to explain that to you. So I also meet my father Russell in a few months, but I've been learning a lot, and my life is changing time to time. So I'm also happy to meet you, and I think I'll be having a lot to learn from you. Thank you. May God bless you.
We will connect with you, Musa.